Okay, this is another attempt, and maybe my voice will sound normal. I'm streaming at 1080p now, instead of 4K. And I think previously streaming at 4K is just too much of a tax on my system, and I don't know that I even have the bandwidth to do it via internet, right? So I think that might have been the problem, but I'm just going to listen to myself again and see how the audio is coming through. I don't know that I even have the bandwidth to do it via internet, right? So I think that might have been the problem. Yeah, I think I sound more normal now, which is fine. And again, I don't think there are many people who are watching in 4K anyway. So this will be a lot easier across the board, and I just need to wait before I try to stream in 1080p. So that's the plan for me for right now. Alrighty. So, in my next sermon, I need to focus on the 70 nations. And I need to tie that back in. So that was good. I'm glad I dug into that a little bit more. Let's see how David is feeling. Mr. Narrator David.
Saw in a heavenly vision and understood from the tablets of heaven. The vision explains how future history will be divided into 10 weeks, presumably weeks of years as in Daniel 9:24 through 27. The weeks describe the time of the end and the judgment of the watchers. The Epistle of Enoch, 91:1 through 10, 92 through 105, is something of a sermonic exhortation. Deferring once again to Collins. The bulk of the epistle is taken up with woes against sinners and exhortations for the righteous. The sinners are condemned mainly for social offenses. They build their houses with sin, 1 Enoch 94:8, and trample upon the humble through your power, 1 Enoch 96:5. The reward of the righteous, however, has ultimately an otherworldly character. They will shine like the lights of heaven and be associates of the host of heaven, 1 Enoch 104:2 through 6. They are also promised some more mundane gratification. The wicked will be given into their hands, and they will cut their throats, 1 Enoch 98:12. The last two sections are quite brief, the birth of Noah, chapters 106 through 107, and another chapter of Enoch, chapter 108. The former portion narrates how Noah's miraculous birth foreshadowed his role as the preserver of the human race. Placed at the end of the corpus, the story promises salvation for the righteous, who will survive the great judgment that was prefigured in the deluge. The final chapter is little more than an appendix that alludes to earlier journey traditions and provides a last word that assures the salvation of the righteous and the damnation of the sinners. The story of the sin of the watchers, 1 Enoch 6 through 16. Understanding the sin of the watchers in 1 Enoch is fairly straightforward. One needs only to read 1 Enoch 6 through 16 to see how the writer expands upon Genesis 6:1 through 4. For that reason, I'm going to reproduce a good bit of this portion of the book of the watchers in what remains of this chapter. The translation is that produced by Nicholsberg in his scholarly commentary on 1 Enoch. The most salient chapters are 1 Enoch 6 through 8, and so we begin with them in their entirety. 1 Enoch 6. And when the sons of men had multiplied, in those days, beautiful and comely daughters were born to them. And the watchers, the sons of heaven, saw them and desired them. And they said to one another, Come, let us choose for ourselves wives from the daughters of men, and let us beget for ourselves children. And Shemhazzah, their chief, said to them, I fear that you will not want to do this deed, and I alone shall be guilty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, Let us all swear an oath, and let us all bind one another with a curse, that none of us turn back from this counsel until we fulfill it and do this deed. Then they all swore together and bound one another with a curse. And they were, all of them, 200, who descended in the days of Jared unto the peak of Mount Hermon. And they called the mountain Hermon because they swore and bound one another with a curse on it. And these are the names of their chiefs. Shemhazzah, this one was their leader, Ardikov, second to him, Remishel, third to him, Kakabel, fourth to him, Armumahel, fifth to him, Rampel, sixth to him, Daniel, seventh to him, Zykel, eighth to him, Miracle, ninth to him, Asael, tenth to him, Hermani, 11th to him, Madarel, 12th to him, Ananel, 13th to him, Sital, 14th to him, Samshiel, 15th to him, Serial, 16th to him, Tumiel, 17th to him.
I probably should have skipped all these names.
Numiel, 19th to him, Yehadiel, 20th to him. These are their chiefs of tens. 1 Enoch 70s and all the others with them took for themselves wives from among them such as they chose. And they began to go into them, and to defile themselves through them. And to teach them sorcery and charms, and to reveal to them the cutting of roots and plants. And they conceived from them and bore to them great giants. And the giants begot Nephilim, and to the Nephilim were born Eliud. And they were growing in accordance with their greatness. They were devouring the labor of all the sons of men, and men were not able to supply them. And the giants began to kill men and to devour them.
Hold on, I want to read what an Eliud is. They conceived, they bore them great giants. The giants begat Nephilim, and to the Nephilim were born Eliud. What are these? The text, as established by Nicholsberg for his translations, produces three offspring, giants, Nephilim, and Eliud. Each succeeding group produces the next. Nicholsberg writes, the interpretation of this passage, and specifically the relationship between the giants and the mighty ones, has long been disputed. Ancient interpreters disagreed, although the varying interpretations may reflect knowledge of the Enochic form of the tradition. An identification of the two groups with one another is as old as a Septuagint, which translates both nouns with hoi gigantes, Modern interpreters also differ on the reference of the two nouns, and these interpretations are often tied to one understanding of the history of tradition. Interesting. I'll let him keep going.
And to teach them sorcery and charms, and to reveal to them the cutting of roots and plants. And they conceived from them and bore to them great giants. And the giants begot Nephilim, and to the Nephilim were born Eliud. And they were growing in accordance with their greatness. They were devouring the labor of all the sons of men, and men were not able to supply them. And the giants began to kill men and to devour them. And they began to sin against the birds and beasts and creeping things and the fish, and to devour one another's flesh. And they drank the blood. Then the earth brought accusation against the lawless ones. 1 Enoch 8 Israel taught men to make swords of iron and weapons and shields and breastplates and every instrument of war. He showed them metals of the earth and how they should work gold to fashion it suitably, and concerning silver, to fashion it for bracelets and ornaments for women. And he showed them concerning antimony and paint and all manner of precious stones and dyes. And the sons of men made them for themselves and for their daughters, and they transgressed and led astray the holy ones. And there was much godlessness upon the earth, and they made their ways desolate. Shemihazu taught spells and the cutting of roots. Hermon taught sorcery for the loosing of spells and magic and skill. Berikel taught the signs of the lightning flashes. Kakabel taught the signs of the stars. Zykel taught the signs of the shooting stars. Ardiko taught the signs of the earth. Shamsiel taught the signs of the sun. Saril taught the signs of the moon. And they all began to reveal mysteries to their wives and to their children. And, as men were perishing, the cry went up to heaven. What of the rest of the story? In 1 Enoch 9, 4 archangels, Michael and Cyril and Raphael and Gabriel, see the terrible events unfolding on earth and approach God for a solution. The souls of humankind demand, bring in our judgment to the Most High, and our destruction before the glory of the Majesty, before the Lord of all lords in majesty. 1 Enoch 9:3. The 4 archangels say to God, 1 Enoch 9:11. You know all things before they happen, and you see these things and you permit them and you do not tell us what we ought to do to them with regard to these things. God responds in 1 Enoch 10:1-3 with news that should sound familiar to biblical readers. Then the Most High said, and the Great Holy One spoke. And he sent Cyril to the son of Lamech, saying, Go to Noah and say to him in my name, hide yourself. And reveal to him that the end is coming, that the whole earth will perish, and tell him that a deluge is about to come on the whole earth and destroy everything on the earth. Teach the righteous one what he should do, the son of Lamech how he may preserve himself alive and escape forever. From him a plant will be planted, and his seed will endure for all the generations of eternity. 1 Enoch 10-11 describes how the archangels do as God commanded.
This is interesting. First of all, I'm going to search the Bible for all these angels. Let's see what we come up with. Bible, not the ESV, but top Bibles. And let's go Michael. These are just talking about humans. More humans, more humans. Daniel 10:13. Michael's in Daniel 10:13. Daniel 10:21. Jude 9. Dude, Michael's in the Bible all over the place. I guess not all over the place. Daniel, Jude, and Revelation, though. And then the book of Enoch talks about it. That's interesting. Let's try these other ones. I've never heard of these other angels before. Sariel. I bet he's not in here. My boy Sariel, no results. Let's try Raphael. None. Raphael? I've also never heard of Raphael. I mean, he might be real, but never heard of him. Ooh. He's in Tobit. I want to check this out. Tobit. Come on. There we go. There might be more to these books than meets the eye. I like Enoch. I think it's insightful. Again, you're not saying it's 100% true like we do the Bible, but there's some interesting information there. Tobit, son of Tobiel, son of Hananiel, son of Eduel, son of Gabiel, son of Raphael. These sound like just normal people. I'm going to look through and make sure there's no chapter verse numbers. I'm going to go through and make sure there's no angel named Raphael running around. On that day she was grieved in spirit and wept. When she had gone up to her father's upper room, she intended to hang herself, but she thought it over and said, "Never shall they reproach my father, saying to him, 'You had only one beloved daughter, but she hanged herself because of her distress.' And I shall bring my father in his old age down in sorrow to Hades. It is better for me not to hang myself, but to pray that the Lord, that I might die, and not listen to these reproaches anymore." At the same time, with her hands outstretched toward the window, she prayed, "Blessed are you, merciful God. Blessed is your name forever. Let all your works praise you forever. And now, Lord, I turn my face to you, and I raise my eyes toward you. Command that I be released from the earth, and not listen to such reproaches any more. You know, O Master, that I am innocent of any defilement with a man, and that I have not disgraced my name, or the name of my father, or the land of my exile. I am my father's only child. He has no other child to his heir, and he has no close relative or other kindred for whom I should keep myself as wife. Already 7 husbands of mine have died. What should I do? But if it is not pleasing to you, O Lord, take my life. Hear me in my disgrace." At that very moment, the prayers of both of them were heard in the glorious presence of God. So Raphael was sent to heal both of them, Tobit by removing the white film from his eyes, so that he might see God's light with his eyes, and Sarah, daughter of Raguel, by giving her in marriage Tobias, son of Tobit, and setting her free from the wicked demon Asmodeus. For Tobit was entitled to have her before all others who had desired to marry her. At the same time, Tobit returned from the courtyard to his house. Sarah, daughter of Raguel, came down from her upper room. Wicked demon Asmodeus. Raphael. Now, is this Raphael, the Raphael in the beginning? Or is it the angel? Let's keep reading. I'm looking for more Raphael. Here's Raphael in chapter 5. So Tobias went out to look for a man. He went out and found the angel Raphael. Well, that answers that question. It's an angel. He's in Tobit. He's all over Tobit. Then Tobias answered his father Tobit, "I will do everything as you have commanded me, father. But how can I obtain the money from him, since he does not know me and I do not know him? And now 20 years have passed since I left this money in trust. So now, my son, find yourself trustworthy man to go with you. We'll pay him wages until you return, but get back the money from Gabiel." So Tobias went out to look for a man to go with him to Media, someone who was acquainted with the way. He went out and found the angel Raphael standing in front of him, but he did not perceive that he was an angel of God. Tobias said to him, "Where do you come from, young man?" "From your kindred, the Israelites, and I have come here to work." And then Tobias said to him, "Do you know the way to go to Media?" "Yes, I've been there many times. I am acquainted with it and know all the roads. I have often traveled to Media, and would stay with our kinsman Gabiel, who lives in Rages of Media. It is a journey of 2 days." Then Tobias said to him, "Wait for me, young man, until I go in and tell my father, for I do need you to travel with me, and I will pay your wages." He replied, "All right, I will wait, but do not take too long." This is what we get for never reading these books. The Jewish mindset is permeated with supernatural worldview. It's blatantly obvious. Here's in some other books that they write. They understood that. So Tobias went out. Oh no, I already read that. So Tobias went to tell his father, I found a man, one of our Israelite kindred. Call the man in, my son, so I may learn about his family and to what tribe he belongs, whether he is trustworthy. He went out and called him. Young man, my father is calling for you. So he went into him, and Tobit greeted him first. He replied, joyous greetings to you, but Tobit retorted, what joy is left for me anymore? I am a man without eyesight. I cannot see the light of the heaven, blah, blah, blah. But the young man said, take courage. The time is near for God to heal you. Take courage. Then Tobit said to him, my son Tobias wishes to go to Media. Can you accompany him? I will pay your wages. I can go with him. I know all the roads, for I have often gone to Media and crossed in its plains. I'm familiar with the mountains and all its roads. Then Tobit said to him, brother, of what family are you, and of what tribe? Tell me. He replied, why do you need to know my tribe? But Tobit said, I want to be sure, brother, whose son you are, and what your name is. He replied, I am Azariah, the son of great Hananiah, one of your relatives. So he's lying. This is interesting. Then Tobit said to him, welcome. God save you, brother. Do not feel bitter toward me, brother, because I wanted to be sure about your ancestry. It turns out that you are a kinsman and of a good noble lineage, for I knew Hananiah and Nathan, the two sons of Shemaliah, and they used to go with me to Jerusalem to worship. Your kindred are good people. You come from good stock. Hearty welcome. Then he added, I will pay you a drachma a day as wages, as well as expenses for yourself and my son. Go with my son, and I will add something to your wages. Raphael answered, I will go with him, so do not fear. We shall leave in good health and return to you in good health, because the way is safe. Before he went out to start his journey, he kissed his father. Tobit then said to him, have a safe journey. When he entered Media and was already approaching Ecbatana, Raphael said to the young man, brother Tobias, here I am, he answered. Then Raphael said to him, we must stay this night in the home in Raguel. He is your relative, and he has a daughter named Sarah. Also, it is right for you to inherit her father's possessions. Moreover, the girl is sensible, brave, and very beautiful, and her father is a good man. He continued, you have every right to take her in marriage, so listen to me, brother. Tonight I will speak to her father about the girl, so that we may take her to be your bride. When we return from Rages, we will celebrate her marriage. For I know that Raguel can by no means keep her from you, or promise her to another man without incurring the penalty of death, according to the decree of the book of Moses. Indeed, he knows that you, rather than any other man, are entitled to marry his daughter. So now listen to me, brother, and tonight we shall speak concerning the girl and arrange her engagement to you. And when we return from Rages, we will take her and bring her back with us to your house. Then Tobias said in answer to Raphael, I have heard people saying that it was a demon that killed them. It does not harm her, but it kills anyone who desires to approach her. So now, since I'm the only son my father has, I'm afraid that I might die and bring my father and mother's life down to the grave, grieving for me. They have no other son to bury them. Raphael said, do you not remember your father's orders when he commanded you to take a wife from your father's house? Now listen to me, brother. Say no more about this demon. Take her. I know that this very night she will be given to you in marriage. When you enter the bridal chamber, take some of the fish's liver and heart, put them on the embers of the incense. An odor will be given off. The demon will smell it and flee, and will never be seen near her any more. Now when you are about to go to bed with her, both of you must first stand up and pray, imploring the Lord of heaven that mercy and safety may be granted to you. Do not be afraid, for she was set apart for you before the world was made. Soulmates, they believed in it. You will save her, she will go with you. I presume that you will have children by her. You will save her, she will go with you. I presume you will have children by you, and they will be as brothers to you. Now say no more. When Tobias heard the words of Raphael, and learned that she was his kinswoman, related through his father's lineage, he loved her very much, and his heart was drawn to her. This is wild, man. I've never read Tobit. Never. So they're hanging out. When they had bathed and washed themselves and reclined to dine, Tobias said to Raphael, Brother Azariah, ask Raguel to give me my kinswoman Sarah. Eat and drink, be merry tonight, for no one except you, brother, has the right to marry my daughter Sarah. Likewise, I'm not at liberty to give her to any other man than yourself, because you are my nearest relative. But let me explain to you the true situation more fully. I've given her to 7 men, they all died. But now, eat and drink, the Lord will act on behalf of you both. She is given to you. Take your kinswoman. Wow, interesting. Took the young man, brought him to the bedroom. Tobias remembered the words of Raphael. He took the fish's liver and heart out of the bag where he had them, and he put them on the embers of the incense. The odor of the fish so repelled the demon that he fled to the remotest part of Egypt. Oh man, it's wild. It's wild. But Raphael followed him and at once bound him there hand and foot. Look how they work together. Like, even if not every aspect of this is true, right? You have the situation where the spiritual realm and the physical realm are working together to accomplish a goal and a purpose. Man, it's so interesting. It's so interesting. The angel Raphael tells Tobias to do this, which saves Raphael's life and allows him to get married. And then Raphael follows the demon to the remotest parts of Egypt and binds him hand and foot. When the parents had gone out and shut the door of the room, Tobias got out of bed and said to Sarah, Sister, get up, let us pray and implore the Lord that he grants us mercy and safety. They both prayed, said amen, and they went to sleep. But Raguel, this has happened 7 times that her husband has died. Raguel arose, called his servants, and they went and dug a grave. For he said, it is possible he will die, and he will become an object of ridicule and derision. They dug the grave. Raguel went into his house and called his wife, saying, send one of the maids, go see if he's alive. This has happened over and over again. The husband always dies. But if he is dead, let's bury him without anyone knowing it. So they went and woke him up. He's alive, nothing's wrong. They blessed God of heaven. Wow, this is a wild story, man. Michael, Raphael. I'm sure Gabriel's going to be in the biblical story. Then Tobias called Raphael, Brother Azariah, take 4 servants and 2 camels with you, travel to Rages. Go him to the home of Gabriel, give him the bond, get the money, and then bring him with you to the wedding celebration. You are witness to the oath Raguel has sworn. I cannot violate his oath, for you know that my father must be counting the days, and if I delay even one day, I will upset him very much. So Raphael went with 4 servants, and 2 camels went to Rages of Media, and stayed with Gabriel. Raphael gave him the bond and informed him that Tobit's son Tobias had married, and was inviting him to the wedding celebration. I want to encourage people to read Tobit, just so they can see the interaction between the spiritual realm and the physical realm. When they came near to Kasserin, which is the opposite Nineveh, Raphael said, you are aware of how we left your father. Let us run ahead of your wife and prepare the house while they're still on the way. And they went together. Raphael said to him, have the gall ready, and the dog went along behind them. Meanwhile, Anna sat looking intently down by the road by which her son would come. When she caught sight of him coming, she said to his father, look, your son is coming, and the man who went with him. Raphael said to Tobias, before he had approached his father, I know that his eyes will be opened. Smear the gall of the fish on his eyes. Father will regain his sight. Then Raphael called the two of them privately. Oh, he reveals himself. A little with righteousness is better than wealth with wrongdoing. Better to give alms than to lay up gold. Almsgiving saves from death and purges away every sin. Those who give alms will enjoy a full life, but those who commit sin and do wrong are their own worst enemies. I will now declare the whole truth to you, and will conceal nothing from you. Already I have declared it to you when I said, it is good to conceal the secret of a king, but to reveal with due honor the works of God. So now, when you and Sarah prayed, it was I who brought and read the record of your prayer. Whoa! Before the glory of the Lord, and likewise whenever you would bury the dead. Angels bring written records of prayers to God. And again, we don't know that this is true, right? This isn't scripture. It's Tobit. But there's I think it gives us insight into some of these areas, at least a little bit, right? That's interesting. It was I who brought and read the record of your prayer before the glory of the Lord, and likewise whenever you would bury the dead. And that time, when you did not hesitate to get up and leave your dinner to go and bury the dead, I was sent to test you. And at the same time, God sent me to heal you and Sarah, your daughter-in-law. I am Raphael, one of the 7 angels who stand ready and enter before the glory of the Lord. The 2 of them were shaken. They fell face down. They were afraid, but he said to them, do not be afraid. Peace with you. Bless God forevermore. As for me, when I was with you, I was not acting on my own will, but the will of God. Bless him each and every day. Sing his praises. I like this book. I like Tobit. And the reason I like it is, even if it's not necessarily all true, it teaches us biblical truths, but from the mouth of a spiritual being. And I think that it reassures me and affirms biblical truth that we already know about. Like, we know to bless God and sing his praises each and every day, but here's an angel telling people to do it, that it's essential, that they need to do it. Although you were watching me, I really did not eat or drink anything, but what you saw was a vision. Get up from the ground, acknowledge God. See, I am ascending to him who sent me. Write down all these things that have happened to you. And he ascended. Then they stood up and could see him no more. They kept blessing God and singing his praises, and they acknowledged God for these marvelous deeds of his when an angel of God had appeared to them. And then Tobit sings a song, and I'm guessing this is how it closes. No, there's one more chapter. Wow. So Tobit's song in 13. So the whole book of Tobit has Raphael in it. This is a very cool book. I like it. I like it. Let's look for Gabriel, and then I want to keep looking into Tobit more. I just want to search my library and see if I have any books that talk about Tobit or anything like that. Tobit, a new translation with commentary, handbook. Tobit and Judith. Jonah, Tobit, Judith. You know, I have a bunch of New English translation of the Septuagint. Why would Tobit be in here? Pseudepigrapha on sexuality. I want pseudepigrapha on spiritual beings. That's what I want. Where's the book for that? It's very interesting. Okay. I can't get too deep in this rabbit hole. Let's find Gabriel. I need to read the pseudepigrapha. All of them. Gabriel. Looks like Daniel 8 and 9. Daniel had another vision. Grew until it reached the host of heavens. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to him, "How long will it take for the vision to be fulfilled?" And I heard a man's voice from Ulai, calling, "Gabriel, tell this man the meaning of the vision." "Son of man," he said to me, "understand that the vision concerns the time of the end." While he was speaking to me, I was in a deep sleep, with my face to the ground. Then he touched me and raised my feet. Raised me to my feet. "I'm going to tell you what will happen later in the time of wrath, because the vision concerns the appointed time of the end. The two-horned ram that you saw represents the kings of Media and Persia. The shaggy goat is the king of Greece, and the large horn between its eyes is the first king. The four horns that replace the one that was broken off from four kingdoms that will emerge from his nation, but will not have the same power. In the latter part of their reign, when rebels have become completely wicked, a fierce-looking king, a master of intrigue, will arise. He will become very strong, but not by his own power. He will cause astounding devastation and will succeed in whatever he does. He will destroy those who are mighty, the holy people. He will cause deceit to prosper, and he will consider himself superior. When they feel secure, he will destroy many and take a stand against the prince of princes. Yet he will be destroyed not by human power. The vision of the evenings and mornings that has been given to you is true, but seal up the vision. It concerns the distant future." I, Daniel, was worn out. I lay exhausted for several days, then I got up and went about the king's business. I was appalled by the vision. It was beyond understanding. Wow. I haven't read much Daniel either. It's just you stay away from all this confusing stuff when you have a truncated view of the spiritual realm. You just don't dig into it. You don't look at it. You don't think about it. You just move on to other things. While I was speaking and praying, confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and making my request to the Lord, my God, for his holy hill, while I was still in prayer, Gabriel, the man I had seen in the earlier vision, came to me in swift flight about the time of the evening sacrifice. He instructed me and said, "Daniel, I have now come to give you insight and understanding. As soon as you began to pray, a word went out, which I have come to tell you, for you are highly esteemed. Therefore consider the word and understand the vision. 77s are decreed for your people in your holy city to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and anoint the most holy place. No one understand this. From the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the anointed one, the ruler, comes, there will be 7 sevens, 62 sevens. It will be rebuilt with streets and a trench, but in times of trouble. After the 62 sevens, the anointed one will be put to death and will have nothing. The people of the ruler who will come to destroy the city and the sanctuary, the end will come like a flood. War will continue until the end and desolations have been decreed. He will confirm a covenant for many, for 1 7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering, and at the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation. Like I said, I just stay away from Daniel. I just stay away from Revelation. Luke 1:19. And Luke 1:26. Dude, this is wild. We labor alongside these angels, and we like don't even think about them, hardly ever. Wow, it's incredible. NLT gives a few more, but I'm guessing they're not original language. It's just clarification. So those are the 4 angels. Those are the 4 angels. Let's see what Reversing Hermon has to say. I did not mean to highlight these that. Remove annotations. I'm going to search all literature for Sariel. Not just biblical works, but everything. I'll text all resources. Let's see. "101 questions and answers on angels and devils." Question 35. "We hear a lot about the archangels, but can you explain who they are? The archangels are named in lists of either 7 or 4. In the book of Tobit, Raphael says he is one of the 7 angels who enter and serve before the glory of the Lord. We read that earlier. These 7 angels who stand in God's presence appear again in the book of Revelation. Ooh. These 7 angels are the archangels. Of these 7, only Raphael, Gabriel, and Michael are named in the Bible. Tradition, especially in the Apocrypha and Pseudepigrapha, give the names of the other archangels as Uriel, Ragiel. Oh, so this guy in Tobit was also an angel? No. Sariel and Remiel. Sometimes only 4 archangels are named. The 3 biblical archangels and Uriel Phanuel. These angels who stand before God are sometimes called the angels of the presence. One, 2, 3, 4, 7. 7 archangels. Interesting. Mentioned in the Deuterocanonical apocalyptic texts of 2nd Esdras, where he instructs Ezra concerning evil, commands him to fast, and interprets his vision. The earliest traditions about Uriel are found in 1st Enoch, there Uriel appears as leader of the luminaries. Sariel, not Uriel, is probably also the angel that warns Noah of the impending flood in 10:1. This is the account of Shemhem. Oh, 1st Enoch 10:1. Got you. Uriel does appear among the list of archangels, 1st Enoch 22, as one of the holy angels who is over the world of Tartarus. Later writings continued the association of Uriel with revelation or astronomical information. He's also the angel who appears to answer the question of Ezra. Early Christian tradition develops his role as guardian of Tartarus, while in Jewish Midrashim he is associated with light and enlightenment. This is fascinating stuff. Who wrote this? Mike Heiser. Angels, what the Bible really says about God's heavenly host. Well, maybe I should have read this. I gotta read this too. Wow. Project Gnarly, a wild gnarly appears. I love it. How you doing today, sir? Yeah, this is interesting stuff. I don't have time to dig into all these angels. Gnarly says he is well. How was my sermon? I haven't preached it yet. I've finished it. Let's look. I have finished it. But I haven't preached it yet. I will preach it tomorrow. So there it is, in all of its glory. I'll practice it once today, once I stop streaming. And then I will preach it tomorrow, and we'll see how it goes. Looking forward to it. I'm just studying right now about angels. Different angels. We've all kind of heard of Michael, the archangel. We've heard of Gabriel. But Raphael's an angel I hadn't heard about. He's in Tobit, which is an interesting book. And then I'm studying right now on Sariel, who's an interesting angel. And, of course, Mike Kaiser, the guy I've been utilizing for a lot of my study on spiritual warfare, has written a book about angels, which is very, very interesting. And I got all of this from reading a book called Reversing Hermon, which is another book by Mike Kaiser. So it's kind of interesting. And I dug into the 70 as well, which was also interesting. So today's more of a day of research and just learning. I think I'm going to keep going on reading this.
What of the rest of the story? In 1 Enoch 9, 4 archangels, Michael and Sariel and Raphael and Gabriel, see the terrible events unfolding on earth and approach God for a solution. The souls of humankind demand, bring in our judgment to the Most High, and our destruction before the glory of the Majesty, before the Lord of all lords in majesty. 1 Enoch 9:3. The 4 archangels say to God, 1 Enoch 9:11. You know all things before they happen, and you see these things and you permit them and you do not tell us what we ought to do to them with regard to these things. God responds in 1 Enoch 10:1-3 with news that should sound familiar to biblical readers. Then the Most High said, and the Great Holy One spoke. And he sent Sariel to the son of Lamech, saying, Go to Noah and say to him in my name, hide yourself. And reveal to him that the end is coming, that the whole earth will perish, and tell him that a deluge is about to come on the whole earth and destroy everything on the earth. Teach the righteous one what he should do, the son of Lamech how he may preserve himself alive and escape forever. From him a plant will be planted, and his seed will endure for all the generations of eternity. 1 Enoch 10-11 describes how the archangels do as God commanded, and also round up the offending watchers and bind them. One portion reads, Until the day of their judgment and consummation, until the eternal judgment is consummated. Then they will be led away to the fiery abyss, and to the torture, and to the prison where they will be confined forever. And at the time of the judgment, which I shall judge, they will perish for all generations. Destroy all. The spirits of the half-breeds and the sons of the watchers, because they have wronged men. 1 Enoch 10:12-15. Van Dyck summarizes the rest of the material relation to the sin of the watchers. 1 Enoch 12-16, aptly. The second section, Enoch 12-16, introduces Enoch, who is not mentioned in the first. He is situated in heaven among the watchers and holy ones. There are clear correspondences between this description of Enoch and the one we find in Genesis 5:18-24. Enoch was sent to the watchers on earth to pronounce judgment because their sexual union with the women had corrupted the earth. The watchers were seized with fear and asked Enoch to write a petition on their behalf and bring it back to the supreme God. Enoch went to the waters of Dan, southwest of Mount Hermon. There he fell asleep and saw a dream vision. In the vision, he was brought back to heaven, to the temple of the supreme God. God recalled for him the watcher incident once more and the judgment he had decided. Here, new information is added. From the dead bodies of the giants the evil spirits would arise. They would haunt mankind until the final judgment. Enoch was then sent back to the watchers with the message that ends the story, you will not have peace. The sin of the watchers, a summary. Having read the excerpts from 1 Enoch, we can summarize the story for the purposes of reference throughout the rest of our study. Annette Yoshiko Reed does this nicely, especially as it will relate to the trajectory of this book. The birth of the giants is explored in terms of the mingling of spirits and flesh, 15:8. Angels properly dwell in heaven, and humans properly dwell on earth, 15:10, but the nature of the giants is mixed. This transgression of categories brings terrible results. After their physical death, the giants' demonic spirits come forth from their bodies to plague humankind, 15:9, 11-12, 16:1. According to 1 Enoch 16, the angelic transmission of heavenly knowledge to earthly humans can also be understood as a contamination of distinct categories within God's orderly creation. As inhabitants of heaven, the watchers were privy to all the secrets of heaven. Their revelation of this knowledge to the inhabitants of the earth was categorically improper as well as morally destructive. The watchers, then, are clearly celestial, not human, beings whose actions are regarded not only as morally evil, but spiritually destructive. While human rebellion first appeared in Eden, it is the actions of the watchers that served as a catalyst to spread wickedness among humanity like a spiritual contagion. They are held responsible for teaching humans a variety of things that engender lust, warfare, astrology, occult practices, etc. For the present purposes, readers should have it fixed in their minds that the story of the sin of the watchers not only informed the mass of Jews in the Second Temple period about the meaning and significance of Genesis 6:1-4, but it also informed New Testament writers who were a part of that period and community. We've already seen how Peter and Jude were informed by 1 Enoch when it came to the angels that sinned. The Watcher's story lurks behind all sorts of New Testament passages. Demonstrating this fact is the purpose of this book. Lest this thought be troubling seeming as it is out of place with Christian tradition, two things can be said. First, biblical theology by definition comes from the biblical text, or ought to, not from Christian history or the writings of Christians about the Bible. We must be committed to the biblical text, read and interpret it in its own ancient context, not a later context for our theology. Second, there is solid evidence that in the earliest Christian traditions, this reading of Genesis 6:1-4 was known and embraced. Stuckenbrock writes. In particular, we see the Christian Testament of Solomon 5:3-17:1.
See, this is what I think's interesting, Project Gnarly, is we don't hear much about this stuff in Christian circles. Like, I have never really studied angels and demons very much, and it's interesting to dig into these topics. I don't know. It's the sort of thing that I think is important, and you were talking yesterday about how you kind of come from a different tradition and background, and I think a lot of this stuff is true and informs each other, I don't know.
Evidence that in the earliest Christian traditions, this reading of Genesis 6:1-4 was known and embraced. Stuckenbrock writes. In particular, we see the Christian Testament of Solomon 5:3-17:1. In 5:3, within the section 5:1-11, the author reinterprets the demon as mythos. This is a deliberate reference to the Book of Tobit, which follows the longer recension. Cf. Codex Sinaiticus in 3:7-8, 17, 6:14-15, 17, 8:2-3, 12:15, one born from a human mother and an angel. In the latter text, in the passage 17:1-5, the demonic power thwarted by Jesus, in an allusion to Mark 5:3, is identified as one of the giants who died in the internecine conflicts. Similarly, in the pseudo through Clementine homilies 8.12-18 refers to the giants, which are designated as both bastards, 18, cf 15, and demons,
Hold on.
17.
This I need to know because I took this pause because I paused in Mark to study this, and here it is. In the latter text, wow. I need to copy citations. Yes. And then I'll turn that back off.
Wickedness among humanity like a spiritual contagion. They are held responsible for teaching humans a variety of things that engender evidence that in the earliest Christian traditions, this reading of Genesis 6:1-4 was known and embraced. Stuckenbrock writes. In particular, we see the Christian Testament of Solomon 5:3-17:1. In 5:3, within the section 5:1-11, the author reinterprets the demon as mythos. This is a deliberate reference to the Book of Tobit, which follows the longer recension. Cf. Codex Sinaiticus at 3:7-8, 17, 6:14-15, 17, 8:2-3, 12:15, one born from a human mother and an angel. In the latter text, in the passage 17:1-5, the demonic power thwarted by Jesus, in an allusion to Mark 5:3, is identified as one of the giants who died in the internecine conflicts. Similarly, in the pseudo through Clementine homilies 8.12-18 refers to the giants, which are designated as both bastards, 18, cf 15, and demons, 14, 17, in the antediluvian phase of their existence. Here they are said to have survived the deluge in the form of disembodied large souls whose post-diluvian activities are proscribed through a certain righteous law given them through an angel. Furthermore, one may consider Tertullian's Apology 22, a passage deserving more detailed analysis, in which the offspring of the fallen angels are called the demon brood who inflict upon our bodies diseases and other grievous calamities. In the instructions by the 3rd century North African bishop Commodianus, ch. Evidence that in the earliest Christian tradition.
Nope, this is why I let it scroll itself.
By way of a specific example, the beloved early church authority Irenaeus clearly looked at Genesis 6:1-4, the way the writer of 1 Enoch did. In his article, The Origin of Sin in Irenaeus and Jewish Pseudepigraphical Literature, D.R. Schultz writes. It is well known that Satan appears in the writings of Irenaeus as the tempter of Adam. However, Irenaeus often bypasses Adam in his treatment of Satan and angels, so that this evil spirit world directly brings about mankind's sinful condition. In effect, then, Irenaeus sometimes attributes the origin of sin directly to Satan and his forces in terms strongly reminiscent of 1 Enoch, Jubilees, and other late Jewish pseudepigraphical writings. The role of Satan in man's sinfulness is a prominent one for Irenaeus, as Satan takes on many different titles. He is referred to as the strong man, the devil, and the apostate angel. It becomes evident that Irenaeus uses all of these names to signify a single creature who is angelic in nature and the chief adversary of God. Sin is directly related to angelic powers and principally to the leader of these powers, Satan. He is the first to sin against God and later lead others to that sin or apostasy. Thus, the apostasy reaches from Satan to other angels who follow his lead in sin, transgression, and revolt. Moreover, the apostasy which began with Satan and continued through the apostate angels also extends to the whole of mankind. Ironhouse, speaking of all those whom God should punish in the eternal fires, lists the angels who transgressed and became apostates, together with the ungodly, and unrighteous, and wicked, and profane among men, citing Ironhouse ended against heresies and 1 and 10 and 1:1,2. Ironhouse definitely understands that there exists a causal relationship between Genesis 6:1-4 and the wickedness that follows in Genesis 6:5. Further clarification is achieved through an examination of the manner in which Satan's apostasy is extended to mankind. Ironhouse has 2 different descriptions of the angels defiling mankind. One description is concerned with unlawful unions of angels with offspring from the daughters of men. This unlawful union produces giants upon the earth which cause man's sinfulness, and these giants, which Ironhouse calls the infamous race of men, perform fruitless and wicked deeds. Citing Ironhouse and Proof of the Apostolic Preaching and 18 and Against Heresies 11.436,44,58,4. Ironhouse famously describes these wicked deeds in terms that have clear counterparts to the Washer's story, the virtues of roots and herbs, and dyeing and cosmetics, and discoveries of precious materials, love philtres, hatreds, amours, passions, constraints of love, the bonds of witchcraft, every sorcery, and idolatry, hateful to God. These thought trajectories will be foreign to practically all those whose training in theology and ministry has followed traditional lines. But to first-century Jews, they were common and accepted as factual. Stuckenbrook comments in this regard. Scholars have observed that in a number of early Jewish writings such angels were regarded as evil beings whose activities, whether past or even present, were inimical to God's purposes for creation. Such an observation, however correct it may be, is often mentioned as if axiomatic, and there is, of course, ample reason for this. Traditions which refer to both evil angels and their gigantic offspring are preserved in a number of apocalyptic and sapiential writings dated mostly to the first 3 centuries before the Common Era, including the following documents: 1 Enoch, Book of Washer CHS 1-36, Animal Apocalypse CHS 85-90, and the Noahic Appendix CHS 106-107, Book of Giants, Jubilees, Damascus Document, Ben Sira, Wisdom of Solomon, 3 Maccabees, 3 Baruch, and several fragmentary texts. Only preserved among the Dead Sea Scrolls, especially 1Q20 Genesis Apocryphon, 4Q180-181 Ages of Creation, 4Q370 Exhortation based on the Flood, 4Q444 Incantation, 4Q510-511 Songs of the Sage, and 11Q11 Apocryphal Psalms. For all the apparently one-sided emphasis of these writings with respect to their interpretation of the sons of God and their progeny as evil, nothing in Genesis 6 itself unambiguously prepares for such an understanding. It is thus remarkable how uniformly the ambiguous Genesis 6:1-4 was being read as a story about irreversibly rebellious angels and giants. Stuckenbrook is of course correct that a number of details of 1 Enoch's Watcher's story are not unambiguously present in Genesis 6:1-4. But, as we shall see in our next chapter, they are present in the Mesopotamian story of the Akkadu that prompted the writing of Genesis 6:1-4. When one reads these 4 short verses in light of the Mesopotamian religious propaganda they were designed to rebut, there is no room for any other interpretation of Genesis 6:1-4 than a supernaturalist approach. 3. The Mesopotamian Akkadu, the Watchers, and the Neph.
Very interesting. I'm going to do a quick search for Mark 5 in resources by Mike Kaiser, because that is what prompted me to do this entire study. Mark 5 is what prompted me to do this entire study. And he just mentions it in passing there. But in reality, let's start with that, see what that returns. Ooh, look at this. This is going to be so helpful. Demons, swine, and cosmic geography. This vivid description begins as one of the most dramatic stories in the Gospels, the account of Jesus' exorcism of the man possessed by Legion. The story and its imagery are so unique that scholars have debated Mark's motive for including in his Gospel. One theory is that Mark wanted to give hope to people suffering from mental illness. While the story does describe the man as being restored to his right mind, the modern reading is undermined by the clarity of the account itself. The man was possessed by demons with whom Jesus conversed. The text explicitly says the demons caused the swine to run into their deaths in the sea. Ultimately, these interpretations miss the cosmic symbolic messaging of the incident. Immediately before this exorcism, Jesus rebuked the wind and waves as he crossed the Sea of Galilee, an act that cast him as the God of the Old Testament who had power over sinister forces of cosmic chaos. Prior to Mark 5, Jesus had restricted his preaching and miracles and miraculous displays of power to a Jewish audience. He was, after all, Israel's Messiah. His focus changes in 5:1 when he deliberately enters the country of the Gerasenes, Gentile territory. The mention of the swine further associates this region with Gentiles. What we have in Mark 5 is more than an exorcism and suicidal swine. We have a strong theological message. The Messiah, the Son of God, is not only here to redeem Israel, he is here to begin repossessing the Gentile nations as his own. Reclaiming the nations will require the defeat of the powers of darkness. Jesus' exorcism of Legion begins that campaign, something he'll complete when he returns. That's perfect. Nice. When these gifts are mentioned, they are connected to the apostles. Paul's questions are here rhetorical. By God's design, believers receive different spiritual gifts. If not all believers are given the gift of tongues, which Jesus mentions alongside exorcism, then we should not expect all believers to have the duty or giftedness to cast out demons. Jesus' words hint that the Spirit will empower those whom he chooses for such tasks. Threats against believers, spiritual or physical, do not impede the advance of Christ's kingdom. That's interesting. Oh, there's going to be a ton of references in the study Bible. I'm not even going to check that one. Here's another one. This is so good. Come on. Don't leave me hanging. There we go. I like it. Now I have to find where I was. Oh, here we go. I wasn't too far away. Guys, I'm going to be right back. Let me open a notebook or Word or something. I'll throw it on the screen. Give me just a little bit of time, and I will be right back. Seems good. Be right back, guys. Alright guys, I am back. Sorry about that. My sincerest apologies.
The Mesopotamian of Kalhu, the Watchers, and the Nephilim. Until very recently, the Mesopotamian backstory to Genesis 6:1-4 was unknown to all but a handful of scholars. This means that what follows will not be found in the writings of any modern denominational founder, Calvin, Luther, Wesley, etc., nor any commentary on Genesis, to date, nor on the lips of any favorite preacher or Bible teacher. Without the knowledge of this backstory, interpreters fail to interpret Genesis 6:1-4 in its own context. Insisting on non-supernatural interpretations like the sky hypothesis, where the sons of God are merely men from the line of Seth, violates the passage's original intent and meaning. Introducing the Kalhu. Greenfield's brief summary of the Kalhu text. In Mesopotamian religion, the term Kalhu, Sumerian, Babel, is used for the legendary creatures endowed with extraordinary wisdom. 7 in number, they are the culture heroes from before the flood. In the myth of the 21 poultices, the 7th Kalhu of Eridu, who are also called the 7th Kalhu of the Apsu, are at the service of Ea, Enki. A variety of wisdom traditions from the antediluvian period were supposedly passed on by the Kalhu. The tradition of the Kalhu is preserved in the Vita Temisari ritual series and also by Berosus. The 7 sages were created in the river and served as those who ensured the correct functioning of the plans of heaven and earth. Following the example of Ea, they taught mankind wisdom, social forms and craftsmanship. The authorship of texts dealing with omens, magic and other categories of wisdom such as medicine is attributed to the 7 of Kalhu. Readers familiar with the Watchers episode in 1 Enoch will be able to see a clear parallel to the Watchers story from even this cursory summary. The Kalhu were divine beings bestowing special knowledge to humankind. This is precisely what the Watchers were blamed for in 1 Enoch. But there is much more. Several other specific links to Genesis 6:1-4 will be evident as we proceed. As Greenfield's summary noted, the 7 of Kalhu were thought to have been created in the river and were assigned the correct functioning of the plans of heaven and earth. The river is actually a reference to the primeval deep in Mesopotamian thought. This watery abode was located under the earth, hence, underworld, and was part of, or equivalent to, depending on the text, the abyss, called the Apsu or Absu by Mesopotamians, or realm of the dead. Readers will recall the same sort of conception for the realm of the dead in biblical material, example Job 26:5-6. This means that, for Mesopotamians, the Kalhu came from the abyss and were responsible for maintaining the correct balance between heaven and earth that was the will of the greater gods. As such, the Kalhu were thought to possess knowledge from the divine world that made heaven and earth tick, so to speak. Over time, the Kalhu had dealings with humanity. Mesopotamian literature presents them as the great antediluvian, pre-flood, sages, culture heroes who brought the arts of civilization to the land. During the time that follows this period, nothing new is invented, the original revelation is only transmitted and unfolded. This process of civilizing the world of men is viewed positively in Mesopotamian thought, so much so that claims of both the physical ancestry and equality to antediluvian figures were important for Mesopotamian kings and scholars alike. This was especially the case with respect to the Kalhu, for such associations meant that humans could claim access to knowledge held only by the gods in the Mesopotamian divine council, an idea that would have been used to legitimize status, power, and influence. It is difficult to do justice to the importance of the idea that the knowledge that made Mesopotamian civilization great, particularly in the case of Babylon, came from a divine source. It is a subject with immediate ties to Genesis. Cuneiform scholar Amar Anas writes, there was a broad tradition in the Babylonian scribal milieu that the 7th antediluvian figure, a king, or a sage, ascended to heaven and received insights into divine wisdom. The 7th antediluvian king according to several lists was Enmeterenki, the king of Sipar, who distinguished himself with divine knowledge from the gods Hadad and Shamash. Biblical scholars generally agree that the religious historical background of the figure of Enoch, the 7th antediluvian patriarch in Genesis 5:23-24 and subsequently the apocalyptic authority in Enochic literature, lies in the 7th Mesopotamian antediluvian king and Enmeterenki. As this excerpt demonstrates, the connection back to Genesis is Enoch. Jude 14 notes that Enoch was the 7th from Adam. Enoch was the father of Methuselah and the great-grandfather of Noah, Genesis 5:21-30. Enoch was the first to be taken to heaven, joining God and the divine council as a man, Genesis 5:24. The correlation with Enmeterenki is interesting because of how the Mesopotamian stories regard the transmission of divine knowledge from before the flood to those who survived the flood. This is specifically the role of the Kalhu. The transmission of divine knowledge via the Kalhu. The scribes of Babylon living after the flood took great pains to establish the notion that their knowledge and so the greatness of Babylon and the greatness of its king was directly inherited from the divine realm. But how did they make that argument? One scholar whose focus is Mesopotamian beliefs about secret knowledge explains. The learned scribes received their secret texts in the same manner that all scribes received texts from before their own time. They inherited copies of them from other scribes. But how did they inherit copies from the gods? This is where another of EA's associations assisted the scholars in their construction of secret corpora by providing a mechanism of reception. EA from very early times was associated with the 7 mythological sages called the Kalhu who lived before the flood. The scholars created a mythology in which the members of their guild became the professional continuation of the position of the ancient Kalhu. Amar Anas goes on to describe how the scholarly writings of the scribes were specifically linked to the Kalhu by a literary tactic. Scribes would title their treatises with names given to the Kalhu. Giving to the antediluvian sages names resembling titles of scientific treatises served the purpose of establishing the explicit connection between contemporary and primeval scholarship. As the Mesopotamian conception of knowledge was preeminently associated with pragmatic kinds of it, the term wisdom denotes the realms of technologies and handicraft skills as well. In some royal inscriptions of first millennium Mesopotamia, references occur to royal craftsmen, Avanu, who know the secret. Such capable craftsmen as the carpenter Ninildu, the lapidary Ninzadim, the metalworker Ninagel, the stonecutter Ninkara and the goldsmith Cusic Banda were the patron deities of smiths, manifestations of the god Ea, and also identified with antediluvian of Calus. Francesca Rockberg adds. This gets to the root of the Mesopotamian scribal notion of knowledge, which is what unites divination, horoscopy, and astronomy in the learned cuneiform tradition. And this way of identifying the elements of knowledge, i.e., systematized, even to some extent codified knowledge, was connected with the gods from whom it was claimed such scholarly knowledge was derived in the days before the flood. It is no understatement that, for Mesopotamians, the entire repository of knowledge that was to prove indispensable for civilization and thus their own greatness was traced back to the wisdom of Apkallis in its entirety. This role is a precise parallel to the Watchers of 1 Enoch, who taught humanity forbidden knowledge by which they became wicked and depraved. 1 Enoch 8:1-4, 10:7-8. But how did the knowledge of the pre-flood Apkallis survive the flood? The lineage of the Apkallu, a well-known tablet from Uruk dating to the Seleucid period, W.20030-7, plots out this transmission of divine knowledge on both sides of it. Flood. It lists 7 pre-Diluvian kings, each of them accompanied by an assisting Apkallu, the divine sage who gave the king the knowledge necessary for civilization. The list reads as follows, with the name of the Apkallu on the left and the king on the right. In the cuneiform text, the signs for the Apkallu are part of the names on the left. Yuun, Aelu. Yuun Dugga, Alagar. Enbetugga, Amaluuna. Enbebilajat, Inbuungalana. Adamlilda, Dumuzu. Utopsu, and Beternki. Following these names, one post-flood Apkallu is mentioned with his corresponding king, Nungalparigal, and Mikar. Other Mesopotamian texts actually provide evidence for 4 post-flood Apkallu. These individuals are the key players in understanding why Genesis 6:1-4 was ever written in scripture. The 4 post-flood Apkallu are said in one cuneiform tablet to be of human descent. The 4th post-flood Apkallu is further described as being only 2/3 Apkallu. The implication of these sources is that the post-flood Apkallu were the result of sexual intercourse with human women. In her short essay on the Apkallu, Ann Kilmer draws the same conclusion, and sees its relationship to the Nephilim of Genesis 6:1-4 quite clearly. Humans and Apkallu could presumably mate since we have a description of the 4 post-flood Apkallu as of human descent, the 4th being only 2/3 Apkallu as opposed to pre-flood pure Apkallu and subsequent human sages, Amenhotep. Unfortunately, Kilmer did little more in her short essay other than to identify the post-flood hybrid offspring with the biblical Nephilim. The work of Amar Anus is an altogether different case. His work in 2010 has laid out the parallels between the story of the Mesopotamian Apkallu and Genesis 6:1-4 in greater detail and with more care than anyone to date. Unlike Kilmer, Anus took note of the observation that the pre-flood Apkallu were fully divine but the post-flood Apkallu were hybrid beings. The result is that Apkallu is a term for both fully divine beings before the flood and quasi-divine hybrid beings after the flood. This is precisely how 1 Enoch uses the term Watcher for both the fully divine sons of God who cohabited with human women in Genesis 6:1-4 and the spirits of the giant offspring produced by the forbidden union, 1 Enoch 6-7. The former is readily understandable, as the Watchers who descended to earth were fully divine. The term Watcher was applied to the latter because the immaterial nature of the giants, their spirits, were not human but divine. Consequently, this is why the spirits of dead giants in the Enochian story were considered evil and, thus, the origin of demons, 1 Enoch 15:8-12. The Apkallu under judgment as evil spirits. The Apkallu from before the flood were heroes to Mesopotamians. But is there evidence that the post-flood Apkallu of Mesopotamia were perceived to be giants and evil spirits? There is indeed. Anus has a lengthy discussion of how Apkallu were also associated with evil. He writes in part, it is a little known fact that Apkallu are occasionally depicted as malevolent beings in Mesopotamian literature, who either angered the gods with their hubris, or practiced witchcraft. The post-Diluvian sages in particular were attributed some malicious deeds, as the translation of the latter part of the Bit-Nisari text shows. It is explicitly said in one passage that 2 of the 4 post-Diluvian sages angered the gods. Hirigal and Gaul angered the storm god, who caused drought on earth for 3 years. The Apkallis occur at least twice in the anti-witchcraft series, Maklu as witches, against whom incantations are directed. From many references in Mesopotamian literature we can learn that the fish-like sages were thought to have been created and also reside in Apsu. The fact that Apkallu are born and often reside in Apsu is not evidence that points to their exclusively positive character, since demonic creatures were also often thought to have their origin in the depths of the divine river. For example, in the Mesopotamian myth about slaying the dragon Lava by god Tishhak, the monster is called Offspring of River. This river, where the representations of witches and the models of evil omen carriers were cast for the purpose of purification, also had an epithet and aspect of deluge. In the Babylonian version of the flood story, of which the Apkallu were important characters, the great god Marduk is not kindly disposed toward either humans or the Apkallu who cohabit with them, thereby preserving human civilization. In the Arabic, I.147, 162, Marduk speaks about what he had done with the Apkallu after the flood. I sent craftsmen down to Apsu, I ordered them not to come up. I changed the location of Mesutri and El Mesustone, and did not show it to anybody. Where is the Mesutri, the flesh of the gods, the emblem of the king of the universe, the pure tree, august hero, perfect for lordship, whose roots reach 100 leagues through the vast sea to the depth of the underworld, whose crown brushed Anu's heaven on high? Where is Ninilgum, great carpenter of my supreme divinity, wielder of the glittering hatchet, who knows that tool, who makes it shine like the day and puts it in subjection at my feet? Where is Kizikbunda, fashioner of God and man, whose hands are consecrated? Where is Ninagel, wielder of the upper and lower millstone, who grinds up hard copper like hide? And who forges tools? Where are the choice stones, created by the vast sea, to ornament my diadem? Where are the 7 Asagas of the depths, those sacred fish, who, like Ea their lord, are perfect in sublime wisdom, the ones who cleanse my body? Anus notes that the craftsmen, a term we saw earlier that was applied to the Apkallu, were apparently done away by Marduk during the flood, just as God punished the Watchers with the deluge. Like the Watchers, the Mesopotamian Apkallis were punished by a flood according to the Arabic. Anus is cautious about presuming that Marduk sent the Apkallu away to the abyss because they violated the divine order of the cosmos, but given the fact that, as Greenfield, where is the Mesri, the flesh of the gods, the knows that? Where is the Mesri, the flesh of the gods, the emblem of the king of the universe?
Oh, I was able to hack that by, I had opened a separate version of it. That's kind of funny.
And who forges tools? Where are the choice stones? And who forges tools? And who forges tools? Where are the choice stones, created by the vast sea, to ornament my diadem? Where are the 7 Asagas of the depths, those sacred fish, who, like Ea their lord, are perfect in sublime wisdom, the ones who cleansed my body? And thus notes that the craftsmen, a term we saw earlier that was applied to the Apkallu, were apparently done away by Marduk during the flood, just as God punished the watchers with the deluge. Like the watchers, the Mesopotamian Apkallis were punished by a flood according to the Arabic. And thus is cautious about presuming that Marduk sent the Apkallu away to the abyss because they violated the divine order of the cosmos, but given the fact that, as Greenfield noted earlier, the Apkallu were responsible for maintaining the correct balance between heaven and earth, it seems reasonable to conclude that their behavior with humanity in the flood episode may be in view. That transgression of the divine order does in fact seem to be in view is further suggested by Marduk's comment that I changed the location of Mesotri and El Mesostome, thereby preventing access to both by the Apkallu. And thus gives us important details, but doesn't quite put the pieces together. Relocation of the tree and stones is also a motif in the Arabic, where Marduk during the flood changed the location of Mesotri and El Mesostome, in the context of sending the sages down to Apsu, I 147-48. The garden with trees and precious stones in the second dream is comparable to the garden in the end of the hero's journey in the Gilgamesh epic, 9 173-90, with the trees bearing jewels and precious stones. It is impossible to miss in these words Ezekiel's language of Eden, the original earthly garden where heaven met earth. Ezekiel's literary context is, tellingly, Babylon, Ezekiel 1:13. Ezekiel 28:11-14 combines the garden imagery, the cosmic mountain imagery, and the lustrous precious stones associated with the radiance of divine presence in his description of Eden. Eden of course had the tree of life. Ezekiel 31:1-9 is also famous for its enigmatic description of the garden of God, 31:8, with massive trees. The point is that the imagery from Marduk's comments about what he had done to the Apkallu in effect points to the banishment of the Apkallu from his presence, his abode, the place of council, the place where cosmic order was maintained. This is precisely how the Watchers were punished. They are cast away from God and forsaken. They no longer have a role in the divine council to participate with God in the affairs of heaven and earth. The parallels to 1 Enoch's description of how God dealt with the Watchers is unmistakable. As Apkallis are sent down to Apsu, the Watchers and their sons will be led away to the fiery abyss, and to the torture, and to the prison where they will be confined forever in 1 Enoch 10.13. The prison, where the spirits of the fallen angels are kept, is a chasm like Apsu, an abyss containing fiery pillars, and it is situated at the end of the Great Earth according to the Greek version of 1 Enoch 18.10, or beyond the Great Earth following the Ethiopic. The expression Great Earth is highly unusual in both languages, but it becomes explicable in the light of Mesopotamian mythology. The Great Earth is a name for the netherworld in Mesopotamian texts, Kigel in Sumerian, whence the Akkadian Kigala was borrowed. The expression is found in the name of Mesopotamian queen of the underworld, Ereshkigal. T. Aramaic fragment 4Q530 from Qumran, which belongs to the Book of Giants, contains in a broken context the reference to gardeners, GNNYN, at work, nurturing and protecting the trees, 227, which connotes the Watchers prior to their apostasy. This reference to gardeners is to be compared to Job 5.6, where God sent the angels to earth, and 4.15 further specifies the reason, in order to instruct human beings and to act, with justice and righteousness upon earth. According to Jubilees, only after the Watchers' arrival and sojourn among human beings were they corrupted and led astray by the irresistible beauty of mortal living. From the comparative perspective, both the educational mission of the Watchers and likening them to gardeners make perfect sense. On Neo-Assyrian palace reliefs and seals, the famous Apkallis as fish-cloaked men or as eagle-headed winged creatures are very often associated with the Tree of Life. The watering of trees by the Watchers in the Book of Giants finds many iconographic forerunners on Assyrian palace reliefs. The Assyrian sacred tree symbolized both the divine world order and the king, who functioned as its earthly administrator. By sprinkling the tree with holy water, the sages imparted to it their own sanctity, upheld the cosmic harmony, and thus ensured the correct functioning of the plans of heaven and earth. The implications of all this are straightforward. After the flood, the Apkallu are judged. The only thing the Mesopotamian texts imply they did that would be contrary to the original created order was their act of cohabitation at the time of the flood. Their knowledge lived on among humans through their hybrid offspring, produced with human women. But Marduk was not pleased. The Apkallu as giants and men of renown. The most telling parallel to the Watchers and, thus, to Genesis 6:1-4, is that the hybrid post-flood Apkallu are giants. Recall that the fourth of the post-flood Apkallu was described as only being 2/3 of Apkallu. This note comes from a section of the cuneiform by Temisiri texts, incantations for protecting a house or building against invading evil spirits. And thus writes. This exactly matches the status of Gilgamesh in the post-Diluvian world, as he also was 2/3 divine, and 1/3 human, I-48. Gilgamesh was remotely related to antediluvian Apkallis, as he brought back a message from the antediluvian age, I. In Jewish terms, he was like one of the giant Nephilim, as exactly the Book of Giants depicts him. There is new supporting cuneiform evidence that Gilgamesh was thought of as having a gigantic stature, its height being 11 cubits. The reading of the passage in which the standard Babylonian epic gives the height of Gilgamesh's giant body as 11 cubits, I-52-58, is now confirmed by the newest published evidence from Ugarit. Gilgamesh is explicitly connected to the Apkallu in a cylinder that refers to him as master of the Apkallu. The parallels to Enochian material in this regard could not be more explicit. Gilgamesh is referenced by name in the Book of Giants from Qumran, another telling of the sin of the Watchers and its fallout. Other names from the Gilgamesh epic and Mesopotamian flood stories are also present in the Second Temple Jewish book, example Humbab and Utanapishti. All three of these names are the names of giant children of the Watchers. And thus notes that different versions of the Jewish Book of Giants depict some giants as birdmen. The giant Mahaway has wings and flies in the air in the Qumran fragment 4Q537-4. Understanding and honoring the polemic of Genesis 6:1-4. What do the Mesopotamian data provide for the present work? Nothing less than direct ancient literary proof that 1. All the elements of Genesis 6:1-4 can be accounted for in Mesopotamian material relating to precisely the same context, the Great Flood. 2. These parallels were preserved in the Second Temple Jewish book known as 1 Enoch. 3. The elements in the 1 Enoch story of the sin of the Watchers that are not found directly in Genesis 6:1-4 nevertheless be entirely consistent with Genesis 6:1-4. 4. New Testament writers like Peter and Jude should not be criticized for their attention to 1 Enoch in their own theological thinking. More broadly, the Mesopotamian Apkallu saga provides something biblical scholars have so long sought, a rationale for why Genesis 6:1-4 is even in the book of Genesis at all. The purpose was not to tell us about the godly human line of Seth. That interpretation is not only wholly ignorant of the original religious context but violates it at every turn. Rather, the reason Genesis 6:1-4 is in the Bible is because the writer sought to target the deeply held religious beliefs of Mesopotamia and, most pointedly, the myth of Babylonian superiority. This is the nature of polemic argumentation, which Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines as an aggressive attack on or refutation of the opinions or principles of another. Enoch's recent work on the Apkallu highlights the polemic nature of Genesis 6:1-4 and the account of the sin of the watchers in 1 Enoch. He writes, varying accounts of the antediluvian history in the ancient Mesopotamian and Second Temple Jewish sources should be regarded as results of ancient debates. Not only direct borrowings took place, but also creative reinterpretations, especially on the Jewish side. Some of these creative reinterpretations must have occurred as deliberate inversions of the Mesopotamian source material. The Jewish authors often inverted the Mesopotamian intellectual traditions with the intention of showing the superiority of their own cultural foundations. The Jewish writers of the Enochian literature in fact invert every element of the Apkallu tradition, linking that inversion to the sons of God and Nephilim of Genesis 6:1-4. The point was to turn the Mesopotamian belief system on its head, to make sure that Israelites and Jewish readers would know that what happened between the sons of God and the daughters of humankind was not something that bettered humanity. It was the opposite, a transgression of heaven and earth that would corrupt humankind and produce a lineage that would later be a threat to the very existence of Israel, Yahweh's portion, and people. Deuteronomy 32:8-9. And thus continues, drawing attention to specific heroic deeds of the Apkallu as perversions of divine order. The Mesopotamian Apkallus were demonized as the sons of God, and their sons Nephilim, Genesis 6:3-4, who in later Enochic literature appear as watchers and giants, illegitimate teachers of humankind before the flood, see 1 Enoch 6-8. As many kinds of Mesopotamian sciences and technologies were ideologically conceived as originating with antediluvian Apkallus, so both Enoch and the Watchers were depicted as antediluvian teaching powers. By comparison, the Book of Watchers 8.1 enumerates the first set of arts forbidden to humanity, a list which consists mainly of useful crafts and technologies. This revelation of forbidden secrets was considered a transgression, because it promoted promiscuity and violence. The wisdom of the Apkallu was not the only target. Their sexual activity with human women was also in the crosshairs of biblical and Enochian writers. Anna summarizes, the sons of God in Genesis and the Watchers in Enochic literature are fully divine, as also were the antediluvian Apkallus in the Mesopotamian tradition. The 4 post-flood Apkallus were of human descent, which means that Apkallus could mate with humans, as the Watchers did. This exactly matches the status of Gilgamesh in the post-diluvian world, as he also was 2/3 divine, and 1/3 human, I-48. Gilgamesh was remotely related to antediluvian Apkallus, as he brought back a message from the antediluvian age, I-8. In Jewish terms, he was like one of the giant Nephilim, as exactly the Book of Giants depicts him. By identifying certain traditional archenemies as descendants of Watchers, the Jewish authors once again gave a polemical thrust to the Mesopotamian concept of the ruler as seed preserved from before the flood. This reversal of attitudes is also seen in the sexual transgressions that were ascribed to Watchers. The sexual encounters between humans and divinities had a clearly fixed place in the royal ritual of sacred marriage in Mesopotamian culture. In 1 Enoch, however, such transgression of the boundaries between human and divine is depicted as sacrilegious at the outset, and a source of irreversible corruption in the human world. Finally, Second Temple Jewish writers wanted to so clearly associate Genesis 6:1-4 with the Apkallu traditions for the purpose of theological polemic that they apparently coined the term Watcher to do so, or at least used it to be explicit. Recalling that, for Mesopotamians, the Apkallu could be good or evil, Anus explains. Figurines of Apkallus were buried in boxes as foundation deposits in Mesopotamian buildings in order to avert evil from the house. The term Watchers is used of these sets of figurines in Akkadian incantations according to ritual texts. This appellation matches the Aramaic term Yryn, the wakeful ones, for both good angels and the Watchers. The text from Asur, Car 298, which prescribes the making of apotropaic Apkallu figurines, often quotes the first line of otherwise unknown incantation Etundu. Al Kalmar, you are the Apkallu figures, the Watchers, example line 14. The verdict of all this is inescapable. No interpretation of Genesis 6:1-4 that does not carefully observe and interact with the original Mesopotamian context can hope to be even remotely correct. Jews of the Second Temple period understood this context. The New Testament writers were part of that milieu. Consequently, it should be no surprise that the sin of the Watchers was in the back of their minds as they wrote about what the Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth must, did, and would reverse at his coming and return. As we'll discover from this point forward, this theme of reversing the effects of the sin of the Watchers lurks under the surfaces of many New Testament passages. Section Preview. Part 2. Reversing Hermon in the Gospels. As we saw in Chapter 2, according to 1 Enoch, Mount Hermon was the place at which the Watchers descended to bind themselves with an oath to corrupt humanity. As such, for Jews of Jesus' day, and the era of the early church, Mount Hermon became emblematic of the transgression of the Watchers and the awful deleterious effect that had on humankind. Each section of the remainder of this book will demonstrate how, to the New Testament writers, the theme of reversing the effects of the transgression of the Watchers was part of their theology. Only one person could undo what the Watchers had done, the Messiah. Consequently, for New Testament writers, the coming of Jesus as Yahweh incarnate meant not only reversing the curse of death brought upon humanity by the sin of Adam, but also the undoing of depravity. This naturally meant the return of the Edenic kingdom of God to earth, the restoration of the divine order of heaven and earth so that the presence of God could return to earth in all its immediacy and fullness. The apostles had expected this kingdom at Jesus' first coming, not only because that made sense to the Jewish psyche, but also because the plan to have the Messiah die and rise again was, to quote Paul, the secret and hidden wisdom of God that, had it been known to the powers of darkness, they would never have crucified the Lord, 1 Corinthians 2:6-8. Since the theme of reversal was tied to the appearance and work of the Messiah, our study of the reversal theme will obviously begin with the first advent. The 3 chapters in this section deal with, in order. Chapter 4, how the birth of the Messiah telegraphed that part of the Messiah's arrival signaled that the sin of the Watchers or sons of God described, respectively, in 1 Enoch and Genesis 6:1-4 would be dealt with. Chapter 5, how the genealogy of the Messiah would have led readers to expect that a reversal of the sin of the Watchers was part of the purpose of the Messiah's arrival. Chapter 6, how certain statements and acts of Jesus would have been parsed by his first-century Jewish audience as gestures of defiance against the Watchers. 4. The sin of the Watchers and the birth.
Nice. Wow. Very, very good. Very insightful, and I'm convinced by it. I'll probably head up. I can tell these concepts are going to be extremely important for me in my next sermon. So it's good that I'm getting going on this and trying to understand it for my next sermon. Alright guys, I've been going 2 hours, and I haven't had a lot of interaction. No worries. People are busy on Saturday. I'm feeling a bit done with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the stream, and then I might pop back on just to relax and maybe play a game or two or something like that, and just stream that on Twitch and on Mixer. So I'm probably done here with this prep. I hope you guys are having a good weekend, good Saturday, and also I hope that you're able to worship God in spirit and in truth tomorrow and glorify and honor Him. I thank you for interacting with me today, and I appreciate it, and I will catch you guys another time. Take care. Bye now.